How I got started in acting. I think I was, for some reason, I had a love. First time I saw uh, something on stage, I thought it was unbelievable. And
I'm
so,
sorry, you want to just turn that mic. You can pull that sucker out. You want
okay.
to just try to keep it right in front of your mouth.
So I used to shuck oysters at the Union Oyster House in Boston after school, and I would spend my money uh, going to theater in Boston, which was pretty amazing theater. I didn't know what I just liked it. And so um, I used to spend my money. I think my family was worried about me a little bit, but I got to see some awesome theater because they try the plays out in Boston before they go to New York. A lot
Oh,
of
so you got to see
I got
great shows almost before they went down to Broadway.
I didn't know what I was seeing, but I saw some great theater. Richard Harris and Camelot, and Anthony Quinn and Zorba the Greek. Just classics. Which, yeah, I don't know where it came from.
And it just kind of left a mark on you, something you felt like you needed to pursue in a way.
I don't know if I even needed to pursue it, but um, the first chance I got, I said, "Oh, a play. I think I'll audition." I was young and walked in and auditioned for a play and got a small role, one line, and it went from there. Whatever.
Was your first role in high school and college?
Uh, I guess my first role was in the third grade where I played Bob Cratchit in Christmas Carol.
Started off young.
Yeah, I still know all my lines. You want me to do some?
Yeah, hit me. Third grade.
uh,
Wow.
um, but yeah, that was my first theater. It was in the Provincetown Theater Company in Massachusetts.
Did you ever plan on pursuing that professionally, or it kind of just fell into place for you?
I think I did. I went to LA and took acting classes and did a little bit of theater and had some success. It was a lot of fun. The training was awesome. Uh, Managed to train with some really unbelievable acting teachers. I was just lucky, and then I think my attraction to fighting and martial arts and boxing has always been like I like that juice, like that feeling of excitement, and that definitely gives it to you. So I did wander into Second City one day, and there was an audition. I had no business auditioning for Second City, It's like, but I went in there and they actually accepted me. So I got to train at Second City. No intention of being a comedic actor or anything like that. It was just scary. So I go, I think I'll do that. So it was fun.
That's almost a skill, being able to go towards the things that you're afraid of. Because
Uh,
most people, when they hit a wall and they're like, I have stage fright,
yeah,
they're not going to say, oh, I need to go get up on stage to get through that.
yeah. No, it's. I think the in terms of the boxing, and I don't know if you know it, but I've been a martial arts instructor for 50 years, and I've studied so many martial arts, just like crazy, studying like 7 days a week, that kind of thing. And but so that gives me a perspective for boxing because martial arts is so well defined in the physiology and the mechanics, especially some of the higher systems, the pivots, the way the body moves in an intrinsic way. I try to bring that sensibility and that knowledge into boxing. So I approach it from a little bit of a different place, but also I quote my acting teachers all the time in my classes because I think something I've learned is that the truths or the gems of wisdom that you can pick out of a really good art with a really good teacher or somebody that's really dedicated, they almost always apply to every art, at least mine. So, and the reason I'm saying that is because, like, my improv teacher at Second City used to say, and I say this to my students all the time, follow your fear. That's where the magic is. And, when sometimes people say stuff to you, you go, whoa, I like that. I think I'm going to do that. And So, and they're so similar, the stresses of going into an audition or what it's like to stand across from somebody that wants to punch you in the face. The adrenaline rush and all that, if you let it get you, if you let it take over, it's the same thing. It feels the same, you know.
Did
So
you feel like you were more prepared to go into auditions where you had been in the ring with people, so the fear wasn't quite the same? I mean, there's no risk of getting knocked out going to an audition.
exactly. And I'd like to say yes to that, but I was aware of it. I was going, wow, this is interesting. This feels like looking at this, 190-pound guy that's giving me the evil eyeball that's going to be trying to hit me in a second. And that feeling was there. I wish I probably could have been more successful to transpose that, but I was aware of it and working on it. I definitely noticed it feels the same. Um, so yeah, it gave me a step up, but I wish I got a little more step up on it. It was so
You could still
foreign.
feel it kind of creeping in the background.
Yeah, yeah, it's creeping in the background. You walk into an audition and there's 50 guys that look just like you, you know, and they're all psyching each other out, just like black belts walking around before a tournament, giving each other little signals, and the battle's already begun. And yeah, it's an experience, or walking out on an improv stage without a script. That's a scary thing. So I think I'm attracted to that feeling.
Well, there's a power in overcoming that, right? There you almost get a little edge when you can say, "Oh yeah, I was nervous to do this." And even if you are continually nervous doing it, you overcome it each time you go through with it.
You do, and different degrees at different times. But when you're successful, you go, "Yeah, I handled that." But and so there's a lot. I think my perspective comes from a lot of different things like theater and overcoming, fear, which is something a coach has to help people with, and uh, to help them deal with the chaos of war. And I use war as a loose term, but it's the fighting art. It's war. It's chaos. Things are happening that are unexpected. Somebody bumps into your head, you could implode on that or make a quick assessment. So it's up and running. You're up and running no matter what you're doing, whether you're in an audition or you're sparring in the gym. It creates chaos that you learn to deal with after a while.
In terms of your fighting career, was it boxing that came first, or did you dive into the mixed martial arts aspect of it?
No, I've never done mixed martial arts. I started boxing and martial arts training basically at the same time. And it was mostly traditional martial arts. So MMA wasn't around yet. There was kind of like the inkling of it was starting to happen. A fighter named Benny Yaquidaz had a school, and they were uh, they were practicing this no nonsense, no gloves kind of martial arts. But I came from a more traditional background, and that's where I did compete. And that was like in the 70s, which was kind of a Camelot time for martial arts, I think, in this country, because the masters, the old masters from Japan and China, they were just kind of arriving here, and they were hardly spoke the language, and they were staunch traditionalists in whatever style that they taught, and you didn't deviate. So Americans, I think, at that time had more permission for self cultivation. I think during the 70s, people said, "Oh, I do this, but I work at the food bank, or I study this, and that's just for me." I think people do that less these days, which I think is sad.
Less in the sense that they're more honed in on their craft, that they're almost absorbed by it in a sense,
By their work.
by the work.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember in those days they were talking about a 20-hour work week. We're getting so efficient. Well, people are up to 60 hours, and it just seems
Oh,
more.
you mean work outside of training,
Yeah.
just general work?
Yeah. They
Okay.
don't have time, I think, nowadays for just a portion of their lives for self cultivation. but it's
Self cultivation in every form, right?
yeah, whatever form it comes in for you, that you do something, okay, this is just for me, this isn't to pay the mortgage. I put a certain amount of time, or I think people were more indulgent in those times that way, and in a really good way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you could back then you could work a part time job and pay for school, right?
Yeah.
And you'd be fine. You
Yeah.
wouldn't have to take out a crazy sum of debt.
Hmm.
And now you could work full time and still try to go to school, and you'd still be in debt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a rougher time, and in those days, the guy that was the butcher in the local store could afford to buy a house, and I think it was just a simpler time, but it was also a turbulent time with the Vietnam War, and people were rejecting, the principles of our parents, and going to demonstrations, and they were after me to go to the Vietnam War, which I wasn't going to do. So it was a moment where younger people were going, no, I'm going to choose a totally different path. And I think that's what might have helped with the self cultivation. People were doing yoga or whatever they were doing.
How did you get out of going to the Vietnam War? Was your number drafted, or they were just going down the line still?
No, my number was was picked, but I just didn't go. And there was no way at that point. It was like I was already anti-war, going to demonstrations and stuff. But and it was punishable by 5 years in jail at the time, and that was always the threat. And if you got stopped by the police and you were driving, they might ask you for your draft card if you looked. Um, but after Nixon resigned, and it wouldn't have been a good look to start throwing American boys in prison after they found out that we were in Cambodia, and the things that people were protesting about, came to pass as being true. And so, the, was it his successor, Ford, gave everybody a pardon.
That must have been a crazy time. People are getting drafted left and right. You don't
Yeah,
want to go. A lot of people don't want to go.
yeah.
And you're just in this constant fear of, shit, what if they catch me? Are they going to ship my ass over there? What's going to happen?
I don't remember being in constant fear, but if I got stopped for speeding, I said, okay, I might be asked for my draft card, but I guess I was lucky that way. Um,
Did they ever catch people and send them over there, or was it jail time?
I,
I
I
mean, did they actually
it
enforce
was
that?
one or the other, but you had to fill out some sort of form they gave you for the pardon and give reasons, but they weren't going to start throwing people in jail at that point. But you know, I I had a lot of friends that went over there and nobody came back normal. I don't know one that really came back whole. So I feel fortunate. And from my perspective, I don't know how other people feel that were in my boat. A little bit of guilt that I wasn't, with my brothers over there, and that they carried the load and paid the price, even though it wasn't for a good reason.
That's the crazy thing is it wasn't for a good reason.
Right.
We
Right.
were just shipping people over there to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even now, with everything that's come out about it, it's. Do you still feel that tinge of guilt today, or
Um,
that was more so back then?
it's just something I'm aware of. I was aware of then, and I don't really even haven't said that to anybody who went to Nam, and I always was, oh, well, I was there for them, but no, I don't think I said anything. I think a little bit, yeah. I mean, it was the right thing to do. It was the moral thing to do. It was survival. It was all those things, but you know, who knows what they might have done in their lives without that. Agent Orange, and just it's war is crazy. It messes you up for real.
War is crazy, and when you realize the war isn't just, I would imagine the psychological damage is just compounded. At
Yeah,
least everyone likes to point to World War II, but at least you could say that was for some cause,
yeah,
that you were going over there and you were fighting for something that was
hmm,
tangible.
yeah,
Vietnam, it just feels like that, and the Iraq War, it just feels like that was for, I mean, something ephemeral that you can't even touch, that wasn't in reality, and
yeah,
people just went over there and died.
yeah,
And for what? I mean, look at what happened with the pullout in Afghanistan. I mean, you have all these things, and it's the same thing repeating over and over again. It's
Well,
like we haven't learned our lesson about it.
it seems like we haven't learned our lesson in a lot of things. Um, I mean, in a way, Trumpism reminds me of Germany. There's that same political uh, vibe that's been set up to blame this guy, to blame that guy, and whatever. And the guy with the big mouth at the top of the chain, and people start following it. So it's scary to me, that I can even make that correlation, but I do.
What's scary to me is growing up, I used to always think that there were adults in charge, that somebody was up there steering the ship. And then
Yeah.
as you get older, you realize,
Hmm.
no, it's just people.
Yeah.
It's just slightly older
Yep.
kids that are in charge of everything, just
Yep.
making decisions for the rest of everybody else.
Yeah. It's
And
scary.
we keep moving forward. There's no adult, there's no person who is all knowing that is guiding us, that is taking care of us or watching out for us. It's just these people that have progressed to this situation in life.
That are making mistakes. I don't know if we
Like
recognize
people
them.
do.
Yeah.
Making mistakes
Yeah.
like people do, but their mistakes are so much more costly than the mistakes we make.
Yeah. And then here I am, and we're talking about war, and that's what I teach, really.
But you teach it in a sense where there's almost empowerment in it because you were teaching people to protect themselves in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, I
Do you look at it that way or how do you see it? You see it as a combat.
I do for sure, but I I try to look at it as I'm a janitor sweeping the floor. I don't concern myself with that. Any of the good things, which there are many that come out of fight training, whether it be martial arts or boxing, they're a byproduct of the process. You know, so you know, if you find peace or you learn some gems of wisdom from studying those arts, that's because you trained really hard, not because you went it going, I want to be enlightened. You don't go, that's not going to work. The training puts you at this place where you go, I kind of get that now, empathy, people scared, the chaos of war, how people deal with that, there's no fighter that's not been humbled in their life sometime, got their ass kicked. And so it's a great way to um, study the human condition in a sense. But as a teacher, I try to stay away from that heady stuff until way down the line because I just want the process to take you somewhere, and then you go, where am I? How did I get here? And that's fun for me rather than trying to tell people here's where you should be heading. Um,
Heady in terms of how it impacts their life outside of fighting.
um, yeah, all those things, because you know you learn in a boxing gym or any fight gym, you create really close relationships. You kind of get naked. You see people's weaks. You study to see people's weaknesses and just how they move. You learn to recognize doubt and all those things. So it's going to take you somewhere. I try not to define that, and try to let them get to a place that they start asking bigger questions because they got there through this thing, through this art form. There are many ways to figure this out, I think, but this is one of them, and it's an abrupt path. It has bumps in the road and pain and laughing. It has all that stuff.
Physical and mental pain.
Physical and mental pain. You try to minimize the physical pain, but the the physical pain is a blessing too.
So when did you start fighting? You started out in boxing
I started out in karate.
and karate.
Yeah, I competed in the AAU circuit, which back in the '70s was, I think, a much stronger organization. They looked after all the Olympic sports at that time, and it was a kind of a no nonsense karate going on in this country. Nobody wore equipment. I don't even think they had invented equipment yet. So there was the risk of getting hurt, and it was very ritualistic, the fighting, so everybody was very serious, and you knew you were stepping into something serious, and you could get hurt.
And so how long did you do that for?
Oh, I probably did that for about uh, 3 years, 3 or 4 years. I had a lot of success. It turns out I like to fight. No, it's a lot of fun to me, and uh, so much respect for anybody that I did fight in those days. And I got to fight some of the best fighters in the country in those days, and they were all considerate, smart guys. They were all, people I would want to be friends with, and the best fighters were. The not so good fighters were walking around pounding their chest.
That's one of the weird misconceptions about really physical activity in general is that it's kind of got this meathead mentality
Yeah,
attached to it.
yeah,
I think that extends to fighting as well.
yeah. Except it's not true. There's no such thing as a dumb fighter. There's an uneducated fighter. There's somebody who may not be articulate, but all fighting is based on deceit and in many realms. So you have to be crafty and smart and anticipate, study. Even if you do it on a just natural way, there's an intelligence about that that's pretty keen.
And so did the boxing come when the karate stopped?
No, I studied boxing and karate. I studied kung fu and studied a bunch of styles, but I always did them. And the reason I did boxing was I wanted to develop hands because once I decided I was going to compete, I wanted to have really good hands. So, and that was a smart move because I did. I had good hands.
Did most people cross train like that back then?
Um, it seems like when you see karate schools, they say, they list about 20 things they teach, and there's always boxing on there. I don't know if they studied it diligently or you know, everybody put on a pair of boxing gloves at some time, but it doesn't make you a boxing instructor. But definitely the skills that if you're trained correctly in the martial arts, you know, it'll only make you a better boxer because there's a keen sense of concentration in martial arts that you can bring to boxing. Um, an understanding of the physics and the mechanics that boxers do, but you could do them a little better if you got in a little lower stance or just looked at the world from a little different point of view. So I think it really enhances the boxing.
Well, that's the beauty with mixed martial arts today, right? Is it takes all of the best parts of a variety of different
Yeah,
fighting styles and puts them together and says, "Okay, here you go."
yeah, yeah. And I've my son's a big UFC fan, and I reluctantly have come to enjoy it. Always had respect for them because I respect anybody who steps in a ring. But in the beginning days, like I was talking about in LA, um, the, it wasn't MMA then, or they were calling it something else, but they were all juicing and they were all kind of crazy. And, I stood in the shadow of their thigh muscle, on a sunny day. And they were out there. They weren't that well trained. So they were like, the crazy guys who decided they wanted, and they were just beating the crap out of each other, but their technique was not refined.
They were just jacked up on roids
A
and
lot of
everything.
them, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
say, listen, I love you guys, but in those days, a lot of them were jacked up. And then they got better and better and better, and they started studying the art form of martial arts and boxing, and now they're really skilled. And I worry about them because I don't know how they're not going to take the blows they're taking and not have some repercussions down the road. So I do worry about them.
Were you worried about that back then? Were people concerned about concussions and brain damage and TBIs and things like that?
No, no,
Just
never.
wasn't on anybody's radar.
No, wasn't really. And I'm lucky to say I was an aggressive fighter. So when you're a young black belt fighter and you got a lot of piss and vinegar, my thing was to just seek and destroy. So I was so offensively minded. People had a hard time finding the time to hit me. So I didn't take many blows to the head, thankfully.
Did you ever get knocked out?
No, I came close once. I guess technically I was knocked out, yeah. But I took a right hand, and the guy was big. I thought I was going to be faster than him, and he caught me with a right hand, and I remember spinning around 360 degrees, and I go, wow, this is what I knocked out like. And I saw the referee coming up to me and, trying to corner me, and everything's moving, and it's an echo. It's kind of like the movies. It's kind of like that. And uh, the referee grabs me and he says, how many fingers I got up on my hand? And I saw like 4 hands circling, and I said, what hand? And he said, you're all right. And that was the only way.
How crazy is that? They were just like, yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
Keep
yeah.
fighting.
And I had no idea how many fingers. I did win that fight though, so but I was saying, oh, that's the closest I've been. Luckily.
Yeah, luckily now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Was karate the only thing that you competed in
Yes.
professionally? Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
I'm not that familiar with how that works in a competition style. Are there primarily headshots? Are you going for the body?
Mostly body, but in those days, it was a lot different. There was no equipment.
No
Um,
equipment like headgear, padding,
you
shin guard,
couldn't
nothing like
shin
that.
guard. You would get disqualified for wearing any kind of equipment besides a cup or a mouthpiece. You could pretty much hit to the body as hard as you wanted. If somebody got hit and went down and couldn't get up, you won. If you hit them to the face and split them, if you drew blood from the face, you could be disqualified. So the facial contact was up, or the lack of facial contact developed a really finite accuracy. So you could come up and hit somebody to the eye and come within a quarter of an inch and come back, and that would be considered a point in those days. But mostly you would go to the body because you could hit them to the body. And
So you wouldn't actually connect with their face. You would
no,
just get super close.
yeah, yeah. I and if you were this far away, it wouldn't score. You had to be like there, and it had to extend and come back. So it couldn't be like today. I think at the karate tournament level, but this was pretty high level. That we're going to the Pan Am Games, and the worldwide competition. So but now if you go and they have big soft things, and if you touch him, but it had to be delivered to the face in a straight thrusting way, have impact, and come back to show incredible control. That's the only way that would score a point. So the body was the primary target.
And that wasn't because they were worried about damage to the face. It was just the blood. You couldn't have
Um,
blood coming down.
well, no, I hopefully they were worried about the damage to the face. Um, you're bare knuckled. You're punching mostly with the one knuckle on your hand. So anything to the face, it's basically going to be bone on bone. So it's going to cut immediately. So yeah, they were trying to prevent that. And the element of control was a big part of karate at that time. It was the World Junior Karate Association, and that they want that accuracy and that beautiful movement coming in and pulling that hand back. But people got carried out, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can kick, right? You could throw kicks to the body.
You can kick to the body.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a rough liver shot or something, I mean,
Oh,
yeah, it's gonna be painful. That's gonna be a wake up call.
yeah. I remember at the 81 Nationals, AAU Nationals in Chicago, um, uh, the Olympic Committee was looking at karate. I say karate because it's 2 words. Most people say karate, but it's kara, meaning empty, and te, meaning hand. It's really a Buddhist definition. It really means empty mind. But the Olympic Committee was looking at karate and taekwondo as a possible Olympic sport edition. and they changed the rules and did some changes, and everybody was trying to clean themselves up. And I remember that tournament, 50 people a day got carried out, where the mayor of Chicago was saying, I'm closing this thing down.
Jesus.
So, and Taekwondo won over karate that year.
Why was that? Just the technicality of it?
I think they were more unified. I think they presented a more unified organization. And they won out.
That must have been a bummer.
I think it was. I mean, there was, it was, it was a good look into the politics of sport for a lot of us, because things changed when all of a sudden this might be Olympic sport. People were in the higher echelons of AAU and WUCO. We're all jockeying for positions that were going to be lucrative in the future, So I think rules were changed that endangered because they wanted a more exciting fight, and the rules they changed made it more dangerous, clearly. And I think karate was less successful in keeping those injuries down than Taekwondo, which is Korean.
Was there money in it back then, or was this just you were just fighting
No, there
to
was
fight for
yeah,
reputation?
no, there was no money. I mean, the only money that there was in the sport itself, running the organizations and stuff. But it was amateur sports, amateur athletic union.
How did you get involved in that? What made you want to start?
I think it was the culture. My first teacher he was an awesome teacher, and he taught people how to move, which is his biggest gift to me. He taught me how to teach people how to move. But he was also a competitor. He was a runner, and he was he was on the board of the AAU, so he sort of encouraged us. And so I did it, and I was a pretty good fighter almost from the start. So he cultivated me, and it was fun for a while.
And how old were you when you started?
Early 20.
Oh, 20. Okay, I was thinking maybe teens.
No.
So it was a little later.
Yeah.
And then you did it for 4 years, 6 years?
About probably 3 or 4 years
4
I did
years.
AAU, and then I moved out to LA
And did you still train when you went out there?
every day.
Every day, but you
Yeah.
didn't compete professionally?
No, I
Okay.
was done with that, and but I always trained.
What
That's
made you
just
stop competing? Just wasn't profitable. You couldn't
it.
sustain it.
No, I don't know. I think I was done with it. I think I could do this. I was a rated fighter. I was All America one year. I mean, like I probably did. I could stay in it for another 5 or 6 years and maybe whatever. I don't know what would happen, but it was like, okay, that was fun. I really enjoyed that. Now it's time to do something different.
And is that when the acting stuff? You're in LA now. It's kind of
I was
shifting
in LA,
focus.
in LA, yeah, and I was lucky. At that time, martial arts were like crazy in LA. Everybody wanted to practice martial arts. Bruce Lee and David Carradine from the old series Kung Fu. Do you remember that? And it was like a martial arts craze in LA. So I had credentials, and I started teaching. I didn't plan to, but I started teaching in LA, and I was teaching producers and directors and actors, and that led to a couple of roles, and started taking acting classes, studying with as many people as I could, and took it for a ride. But you know, made a few bucks, got to travel. Did a lot of bad movies. You could see in a drive-in in Texas, maybe some Saturday night. I wasn't as dedicated to that art, although I worked hard, because you can't go there and not work hard. But in retrospect, I didn't give that what I gave and continue to give my martial arts, which, I mean, I've made a small fortune teaching martial arts. Only kidding. No, you nodded like you believed me
Oh
for a
yeah, I was
second. Yeah,
buying you for a second.
the
I was like, all
money
right.
is unbelievable. But
I thought you were gonna say, "Yeah, I've got a mansion up on the hill over
yeah,
there." I
I
mean,
do. I do. I have it all. Um, and so that sense, I had this thing that I loved from day one. I'm going to do this forever. Who knows why? I have no idea why. But I always felt fortunate that I found something I love to do. So I found other ways to pay the bills.
did you do you love the teaching aspect of it more than the actual practice of it in competition?
Um, well, yeah, I think so. But I'm at a stage now in my life where that's all changing.
Yeah, you don't wanna be fighting now. You don't wanna be getting in the
No, no,
ring,
I'm not fighting
going
anymore
crazy.
unless I'm in Old Town on a crazy nutset.
Yeah,
I
a
mean,
homeless guy walks up and says,
yeah,
"Hey, we're gonna have a problem."
no, I'll leave the homeless guy alone. Um, no, no, teaching's an awesome gift, and I'm honored to do it because you get to have intimate relationships with people, and that last a lifetime. And so I'm just lucky that I found something that I love to do. And I realized, well, I'm not going to make much money doing this, so I better find something else to do too. Um, so I've always worked to allow myself to do that part, which has been good. And acting was that. I made a few bucks acting.
But it didn't scratch the same itch as
No, I can't
combat.
say it did. I mean, it was great. LA was good to me. Holly was good to me. I fell in with the right people. You know, sometimes a guy would come in. I was like other people. I was working. I'm managing a restaurant in L.A. and you know, I was teaching too, so I was kind of cross-referencing. It was a big movie star hangout, really hot place in Hollywood, and directors would come. Hey Gary, I gotta, can you be here tomorrow morning? And it's like, yeah, shit, I'll be there. And you know, and so slowly some roles. Did a short stint on Days of Our Lives, some commercial stuff, action stuff. I've died a lot, bad cops, some kung fu stuff. Got to travel a little bit, so it was fun.
Yeah, I saw a scene from was it Spider?
Oh, you did?
Yeah, where there's a lot of action going on, a lot of explosions.
Oh yeah. That was in the Philippines. Um, it's actually released now on a Black Belt 2 Fatal Force. Drugs were the problem. Meet the solution. um, and I think that's on Amazon right now. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's a bad film. I mean,
But I would imagine a great time just being in the Philippines shooting.
Oh,
I mean, you're just
awesome.
having a ball.
I was the bad guy. So I got to kill a lot of people. I got to do crazy explosion stuff. And, you know, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. But it's not going anywhere. I think, you know, one of my biggest claims to fame is Rotten Tomatoes referred to me from that movie as no name actor Gary Rooney, which I have on my office wall.
Do you really?
Yeah,
Oh, how
very
funny.
proud of that.
What pulled you out of acting? Just
Um,
a realization that it wasn't kind of your thing, or you weren't gonna be able to give it your all.
maybe deep down, I knew that, but I didn't. LA was great to me. I've got a lot of gratitude for LA in so many ways, and I met some awesome people and got to meet some, teachers that were forever influenced me. But I never felt at home in LA. I'm from Boston, and from an Irish working class, and when I first got to LA, it was like, this is crazy. And you have to make a lot of adjustments when you come from the East Coast. Like, the movie Good Will Hunting?
Yep.
Okay, that's my neighborhood. All right. So from there to land in, I lived on Cape Cod for about 8 years before, but that's where I grew up. So to land in LA, you just go, wow, this is crazy. People are crazy. They don't seem, in a lot of ways, they don't seem that happy even. And I met a lot of successful people, famous people. I worked for Dudley Moore and Liza Minnelli, and I trained, and I'm like looking. I go, wow, they got bosses too, and they got more money than God, but I don't know if some of them don't look that happy. So I never felt at home in LA. Like I knew I was going to live there. So I had a good year, and I decided, all right, I'm getting out of here. I had enough money to pay cash for a house. And so I moved to Portland, where they had a acting community there, and they had a SAG office there, Screen Actors Guild office, and they were like shooting a lot of movies there. So I said, I'm going there. So I drove up there in a van and bought a house in one day, wrote a check. I said, I'm living in Portland now, and loved it, and worked there. Got some work, but then the film industry moved to Canada. Do you remember that happened?
Mm-mm.
Well, Canada made the film industry all sorts of deals. Come here, no taxes. So productions were flying out of the U.S., even out of Hollywood, to go to Vancouver to shoot films because they could do it, $6 on the 10 or whatever. It was unbelievable. So they were stupid not to. Well, that closed all the smaller markets in the film industry, the small cities like Portland, which had to have a SAG office, there's some work going on. So, but those small cities that had acting stuff, it all went to Canada. And at that time, I had met my wife and we had a baby, my son. And it was like, okay, what's going on now? And she's an artist. She's a potter, kind of well-known potter, Kate Purcell. And I was not going to bring my family to LA to like, chase this dragon, whatever it was going to be. So it
You
was,
just didn't want them around that
no,
soon.
I didn't want to bring up a son in LA. Didn't want to do that. So we lived in Portland for a while, and then we moved down here, which she always wanted to do. My wife, she's a card-carrying hippie, so she always wanted to come back to Humboldt County. So I kind of made that deal with her when we got married.
Was she from here originally?
No, she's from Connecticut, um, but then she went to school in Wisconsin, and then ended up here working at a organic farm, and she was and loved it here. So she always wanted to come back here, and it turned out to be a great place to bring up our kid. So it all,
Yeah, better than LA, I would imagine.
yeah,
I think that's a safe bet.
a lot of pitfalls in LA, and I think especially now, I think it's really hard to be a young person. I really do. I think we had it easy. I had it easier. Things were simpler now. I don't know. Young men don't seem that confident to me anymore. There's all this doubt, and you know,
Oh man, there's a lot to unpack there.
yeah. I think people don't understand that it's hard to be a young man right now. I think these days, I really do. So I feel for them. But this was a good place, you know, to bring up a young man, because people are pretty, for the most part, forward thinking here, and so we made a good plan coming here.
What do you think that stems from? Because I agree with you. It seems like self confidence, these previously held masculine qualities almost seem to be beaten out of men or
Yeah,
looked down upon in a way.
I think you might have just put your finger on it. I hate to sound like that guy that it's on the I forget his name. He's always Jefferson, or he's the guy that worked at Harvard. He was a teacher at Harvard. They threw him out for his right thinking ways, but he really stresses on that young men are in trouble right
Was
now.
that the judge that recently happened
No,
to?
not the
Okay.
judge. He was a professor there, and why can't I think? I forget his name. Maybe it'll come to me. But he's online all the time. His little spots. He's on every show, and people hate him. And I don't agree with much what he says, but that part I kind of get, that young men are in trouble right now, and um, they're the permission to have a relationship or how they relate to women is totally different than when we were kids. If we liked a girl, we'd ask her out, or whatever. But now they're reluctant. They're reluctant to cross all these lines. I don't have the answers. I just go, wow, man, it looks tough right now. I'm glad I'm not living now. It seemed a lot easier for me to feel confident, and maybe for bad reasons. I don't know. The root of my confidence might have been from some messed up stuff, but It was easier. You agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not 100% sure why, obviously, because I've only lived in this time period, so I didn't get to
Hmm.
see that. But you look at the culture, which has some negatives to it for sure, but it just seemed like what a man was is significantly different than what a man is today, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and a lot of good reasons that they should be different than they were in those days. I get that too, but in this process, whatever has happened, and I wish I knew the answers, it's taken its toll on our young men. I know, you know, it seems to me, and I could be wrong. It seems to me that young women are more relaxed than young men nowadays. They seem to have a handle on stuff. Or more, to me, more young men are floundering and not feeling good about it. So um, I don't know what the answer, but I wish it was different.
Do you think that's a discipline aspect? Do you think there's just because obviously there was pressure on your generation too, right? To get a job, to work,
Yeah,
to provide.
yeah,
So there's still those same levels that I think men want to achieve. The
yeah,
role of being a provider, self-sufficiency, of independence. But I'm not quite sure if my generation feels that that is attainable, maybe.
yeah. I think that's a good point. But whatever I was encouraged to do is basically go out on your own and make out what you're going to do. Now, I think you're expected to go to school and come out and be six figures coming out of school, and that's not happening anymore. So, well, that's a disappointment in yourself. I think the expectations are higher, where there might have been a buffer period for us. Like, okay, I'm leaving home. I'm going to wait on tables on Cape Cod, sling spaghetti for a summer, and meet some artists and be exposed to things or whatever. Whatever happens. But I'm not feel like I got to jump into this business world or wherever I go. Again, maybe there was more time for self cultivation, and maybe you end up in a place more organically than if you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that and you're not supposed to ask this, and there's so many rules for these poor kids.
Do you think that picking up fighting, that it helped you in that regard? That it gave you something to kind of hone your energy into and almost a mirror that you could look at your reflection in and say, okay, maybe I'm a little weak here and I need to strengthen this or I need to get better in this regard. Almost like a scaffolding for how you wanted to build out your life.
I don't think so. I just remember being an ultra confident kid, even though
Even before fighting.
even before I had any business feeling confident, just a dumb think, yeah, whatever. I was going, yeah, I'm going to do great. I whether it was naive or not, I don't remember going through that awkward stage that I always felt like, yeah, I'm gonna figure this shit out, and it's gonna be good in the end. I'm gonna try to have some fun along the way, and that was enough. Um,
I need to cultivate that kind of confidence in my life because I'm lacking in that department.
really?
That idea of just, yeah, it's just going to pan out. I think I don't have that built into me in that way.
Well, I mean, it brings you back to fighting where you put in an unknown, you put in the chaos, and there's a lot of ways to have doubt, and you just like go, okay, it's like, um, and teaching women. I'm teaching a lot of women now, um, which I didn't expect, but they turns out they like to hit shit too. So I'm actually bringing or trying to, and I do pretty successfully because I've been teaching a long time, bring people through the different stages of like, well, this doesn't feel good, you know, getting conked in the head, or just not that you're getting hit, but just the uncomfortability of incidental contact, maybe bumping your head and they like overreact and or whatever, and it's getting through that confidence is, you know, in sports they say it's based on reps. If you're not confident, do reps. You'll get and fighting it is. I don't know. I think growing up in a working class, Irish neighborhood in Boston, everybody was kind of confident, and nobody probably had any business being confident, but it worked. you know.
Well, and that speaks to that work ethic idea, right? Because that's where I find my confidence in terms of work ethic. I feel pretty solid in that because I
Hmm.
know how to put my head down and just
Yeah.
grind it out. It's when you get into the realm of life and what's next and what kind of path are we going to carve out, because there's so many options, there's so many different things. We're in It's almost paralysis by analysis that there are
Uh,
so many different directions that you can go in. Where do you start? You have
yeah.
to first take a step, and there's so many different ones you could take. You almost just stand still for fear of taking the wrong one.
Well, sometimes I don't counsel. I mean, I have a lot of young men students, and most of them don't need this kind of counseling. Um, I end up with extraordinary kids somehow. Like they piss me off. They're so extraordinary. But I tell, yeah, and kids don't like to be mentored right now. I might find, like when I was young, I remember I would see some guy who owns the store or the restaurant or whatever, and I would always be looking at them, and go, how do you get that? How do you work that out? And if they took the time to talk to me, I was like, yeah, yeah, tell me some more. I want to know. I want to know. I think I think there's an element of that missing where young people, if you say, hey, you might think about, they go, yeah, yeah, you know, they don't really want to hear your advice a lot. It seems to me. So I'm old enough. Like, okay, whatever. I'm done. I don't need to talk to you about it. But the one thing I do say, that when I get the chance to a kid who's like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, and like, whatever, girls don't like me, and I go, all you have to do is walk in a direction. Take the goal off the chart. Take the goal off. Don't even think about that. But you say, I like that. So you walk in that direction. And I guarantee you're not going to go from point A to point B to that destination. You're probably going to veer off. That destination is going to become less important, and you're going to head in this direction, and something's going to happen to be a plot change for you. And you go, oh, but it's only because you headed in a direction. Stop, take the goal off the map. We've made our kids so goal oriented, in terms of money and what they're expected to do, that forget that for a little while. Just walk, and I guarantee you won't end up where you think you were heading in the first place.
And you'll probably be happier at that other spot.
I think so. I think so.
That goal oriented thing is almost ingrained in our society now, that you have
Yeah.
these certain boxes you have to check at these certain ages.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't meet that, it's not, okay, I'm going to keep moving forward. It's, oh, now I'm so far behind because I couldn't even check that box.
Yeah.
And so now I'm still struggling to check this box while I'm missing out on all these other boxes.
Well, the other thing that they don't know, I think, is that, you know, if you talk to my son, he'll tell you about my days in the monastery and stuff, because I want him to think clearly and make good decisions. So I don't tell him all the stupid shit I did. So they think that of their parents are this straight line walkers, which most of us were not, especially in the 60s and 70s. A lot of experimentation was going on. A lot of things were changing. So we might have not been walking the straight line, but we tell them we did. And I think for the most part, they believed, oh, my dad would, whatever.
Straight as an
Maybe
arrow.
I'll have to sit down and have a beer with them one day, tell them the truth. But so that's where they're coming from mentally, is like this sense of discipline. But you got to make mistakes. Mistakes are good. You know, um, it's all part of that up and down thing. Um, but martial arts and fighting help with that. They really do, because, um, they have this Buddhist Zen like sort of sensibility to it. And it goes, of course, the four noble truths. The first one is pain. Life is suffering. It sucks, you know. So deal with that. And and so that transposes to fight. And guess what? You got hit in the head. It sucks, you know. Deal with that.
I think there's almost something romantic in that suffering, though,
Yeah.
that you're enduring. You're just the ability to endure, in a sense, that you can
Hmm.
take what life dishes to you, and yeah, you might get knocked down, but you're going to get back up and you're going to keep going.
Yeah.
I find that to be pretty appealing.
Yeah. Yeah. But expect pain. It's going to come, and how you deal with that. Um, and so in fighting those principles, they always you can always go, oh yeah, maybe life's like that too. You know, it's simple. It's I make it too complicated. Maybe it's simple. Because the second noble truth is all suffering comes from desire, and the third is get rid of the desire. So, and when you're in the ring or you're in an uncomfortable chaos of war, that's like saying, "Oh yeah, it is suffering." You know, this guy's trying to hit me, or you're sparring in the gym and you're afraid to get hit. This is like purposely enduring suffering. That's what martial artists do because that's like they realize, oh, that's what it's about, and dealing with that, and then the chaos goes away, and then you're just a thinking, measuring, you know, just seeing the process happen, void of the emotion of it, you know, and that's a great place to be. I mean, if you can be in the middle of chaos and go, yeah, I think I can deal with this. I've been here before. That's a great lesson, I think.
Well, that's where I was going with the scaffolding of life comparison, is that in fighting, you have to overcome and work through so many different things and emotions that are directly applicable to life. Overcoming fear, doing things maybe you don't want to do, working hard, being disciplined, and all that directly translates to living a life that is successful by whatever definition you have for success.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to be disciplined. You're going to have to do things you don't want to do in the moment
Hmm.
to get through.
Yeah. And you know, I like that the process teaches that. I don't have to say those things. I don't say them on purpose. I mean, maybe sometimes I do. I won't think about it this way, but mostly I just let the process
Do
uh,
the work.
do the work. So when a student comes, you know, for whatever the reason they come, guys, and what somebody might have kicked sand in their face at the beach, or they've been wanting to do this their whole life. They were the smart kid in school, but they always, you know, maybe they didn't, they got picked on a little. There's whatever reasons people come in their midlife and say, I want to box now. Um, you know, that's not my a place to decide why or whether, as long as I feel like I can teach them and we can have a relationship, they're going to go through this process. And my job is not to say, oh, and this will teach you this in life. You know, it's like um, I'm not a Jedi. I sweep the floor. I'm a janitor. At the end of the day, I sweep the floor. I keep you as clean as possible. But one of the things that I do is at first I have to be a little gentle with you. So, you know, you're on a timer, you're doing bag work, you're doing bag drills, and you're exhausted. You feel like you're gonna, but you can't stop till the bell goes off, you know? So you get through these little things. Or then when you start doing pad work, you know, and you're ducking things, and it's always with me. So, and I say, you're not going to get hurt here. I'm the last guy that's going to hurt you. So you can let it go and try to get rid of that emotion. But as you get comfortable, I turn the gas up and I make it a little crazier for you. And you get comfortable there, I make it a little crazier for you. And sometimes we get close to that place where you go, put your hands on your head, but that's part of being a teacher is turning up the gas. And sometimes people get aggravated with it because they go, well, I just can't think about nine things. I'm like this. I'm freaking out. You know, my head's getting hit. Okay. But that's by design. So realize that that's by design. If I'm turning up the gas on you, you're doing something right. And and then they get to this place where they can stand in the middle of that chaos and not freak out. So That's a great metaphor for them. They teach themselves. I don't teach it. I just move them through the different processes.
You're almost Mr. Miyagiing them in a weird way.
I don't know about that, but I feel like they teach themselves. I'm only doing what was done for me. It's not like I came up with some great new thing. Somebody taught me a process. First and foremost, teach people how to move, and then teach them how to focus, and teach them how to understand diversity, and teach them how to be confident. And mostly that comes from threading the needle concentration. There's no fear when you're threading a needle concentration, when you learn to take those lines of concentration that are like your brain's moving like this, and then you move those lines together and you're looking down the scope, you've kind of removed that stuff. And that comes from intense concentration, threading the needle concentration, and just getting people to that place. And that's a meditative state. It's a place that's pretty free of all the things that mess with your head. If you can get to that place, it's pretty magical.
Do you find that most of your students are coming to you for self defense work? That it is that somebody kicks sand in my face kind of metaphor of I need to do this to be able to protect myself?
I think there's an element of that, um, but very seldom will they say that.
It's
Usually,
almost unspoken then. Yeah.
mm,
Well, you have to think this is one of the interesting times in life where you can just get by your whole life without ever learning to protect yourself. That where
yeah,
society is so
yeah,
soft in that regard that you don't have to worry about somebody coming out of the woods and beating the shit out of you,
yeah.
and you're fine.
Well, I think that is that true because I think people walk to the south end of Eureka and go, "Oh, better turn around." When you get to that one street that everything crazy is going down there, whatever's going down there, you turn around. I think people still live with fear, and a lot of people go, "I don't really want to learn how to fight. I just want to. I know the exercise aspect of it." And I go, "Well, you're in the wrong place then, because I'm going to teach you how to fight." Um, it's like being a baker and making bread but never putting it in the oven. This is what its purpose is. Not to let its purpose come to fruition is not having respect for your art form, whatever it is. Not that not going to be pounding each other's heads in, but you have to have an understanding of the application, an understanding how you're going to get through that application psychological wise, and an understanding how you're going to beat your opponent psychological wise and physical wise, because you don't beat their body, you have to beat their mind. You have to convince their mind that their body's in danger and they've had enough now. So just being tough. So um, I'm flexible there to a point, but I'm not gonna at some point you have to like want to understand what we're really doing here, and in an intelligent way, not in a dangerous way. Shouldn't be injuries. Um, a good example of that is Tai Chi, which I'm a Tai Chi instructor too. Um, but Tai Chi has evolved in this country to this dance that looks beautiful, and you do it in the park, and everybody looks groovy, and um, but it's lost its purpose in a lot of sense. Most people that practice Tai Chi don't know what the applications of the martial art. And if you talk to them, I've stopped talking to them, but somebody came up to me at a party and said, "Hey, I heard you're a Tai Chi instructor," and I said, "Yeah." Well, I just moved to town. I've been studying Tai Chi, and we were talking, and I said, it was a woman, and I said, "So tell me something. What do you think about when you do Tai Chi?" And she said, "Oh, beaches, bunny rabbits, you know, bouncing in a field of lilies." And I go, "Great, great, great." She goes, "What do you think of?" I go, "I'm dispatching opponents." And she goes, "What does that mean?" I said, "I'm basically knocking people out or whatever. That's what I'm thinking about when I do Tai Chi." And she looked at me and said, "Why would you want to do that?" And I said, "I don't think I'm your teacher, but because that's its purpose. But sometimes when Americans get an art form or whatever, they change it. And Tai Chi is one of those things. So if you learn Tai Chi with me, you have to understand the applications. You have to have some desire to one day let the let the applications come out and be able to use them. Otherwise, you're just mimicking this movement that has no purpose. In in martial arts, in Japanese, they call it bunkai, and bunkai means application or purpose, and that's always where your mind is. If it drifts 1 second, 1 millisecond off that purpose, so even when you're doing a movement without a partner, you're imagining when you make contact with them, what comes next. It's this progression of series of things with a beginning, a middle, and an end. In Japanese, it's very linear and straightforward. In Chinese, it's more circular, more physics involved. And in Tai Chi, it's slowed down to such a speed that when you start moving and you start turning your head, you're going through the experience of, oh, an attack's coming. This is what it feels. And when that defense changes into offense, your mind and your body are changing with it. So it slows that process of a quick, fast martial art into you just in microseconds experiencing it in a really slow way, which is amazing.
Tai Chi is a prime example of that, right? Because that's the one that gets a lot of slack for, oh, it's not really a martial art, it's like a dance. People are
Yeah.
just out in the park. You're almost doing yoga. You're just out there moving. It's not
Yeah.
directly applicable to you fighting somebody off.
Yeah. And I don't even know how good exercise it is if you're not if you're not having the purpose. The one thing that Americans did to martial arts in this country is martial arts almost always require a very low stance, a stance that's very uncomfortable, a stance that takes most people years to come anywhere near mastering where your legs are strong enough, but you essentially take your center of gravity and you slowly lower it to this point where you're solid, you're tied into the ground, even though you can be loose and water like, you're tied in. And Americans have, in a lot of cases in this country, taken the stance aspect out of it um, because it's hard, and a lot of people won't do it when they're in a stance for an hour and their legs are shaking and they go, who the hell wants to do this? So um, I think a lot of us have figured out, well, let's bring the stances up a little bit. We'll get more students. They got to pay the rent. They got to pay the mortgage, just like everybody else. But Tai Chi can be accused of that for sure. And and in the old days, I remember we were like martial artists, and we were going to the Tai Chi teachers, and we were going, let's find out what this is about. We know how to punch, kick. We're fighting. We're rated fighters. Let's go see this guy, see what he's got. And so we were like looking to enhance what we had, and now that part of it's gone.
Do you have a specific martial art that you think is more suited to like life today in the sense of protection? Like, would you promote boxing or, I mean, obviously, or something like Tai Chi? Do you have an entry level one for somebody? Like, if they're looking, saying, hey, I need to, I need to be secure in myself. I want to be able to protect myself. What would you start them out with? Boxing?
I really would, yeah. I would, if I had to defend myself, it would be something crazy. It would be so fast that, you know, the person wouldn't know what hit him. It would be like lightning fast, intrinsic movement, so natural that it's just there and it's over. But that takes a long time, to be honest, to to get to that point. And I try to get to that point in boxing, but I tell my students, okay, and the women, I tell them, okay, these are two things you have to have: a left right. And if you can throw a decent left right, you're probably going to catch most people off guard. and at least half knock them out so you can run. So I spend some time on that. Um, it's probably what I'd use. I mean, I do all these crazy martial arts, but if I had to defend myself, I'm probably gonna like left. And by the time you're in that stage of, oh, something happened, the person that gets hit with the left, the right's already on its way. It's a second torpedo. When that gets there, it's done. So it's an easy thing to teach if you're in the right frame of mind and you just follow through with it. That's probably going to work the best. Left, right, boom, it's over. Not many people are going to stand up to a good right hand on the chin.
Yeah, especially if they've never been hit before.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Do you have any experience with any groundwork, like jujitsu or anything like that?
There's a lot of grappling in some of the martial arts but I've not done jujitsu. I've done Aikido, but there's a lot of grappling. I do a lot of grappling, mostly pain compliance and.
Is Aikido the one that's using your opponent's movements against them? Or what am I thinking of?
Yeah,
Is that Aikido?
no, that is, and it's a generalization. It's an American, so yeah, you usually it's more than
It's more
that.
simplified than it.
It is. It's a lovely and very nice martial art. In my opinion, you're gonna get calls on this. It's not enough. You have to have, one of my favorite teachers is an Aikido teacher. He was my Iaido teacher. This samurai sword. He was my teacher, and and he said this, that you need to supplement Aikido with some hard stuff if you want it to work. And I believe that. So yeah, you are using the people's energy against the person's energy against himself. But sometimes, I don't know if you've seen Aikido demonstrations, you're definitely going to get calls on this. I'm an Aikido guy, get him out here, I'll meet him at the park, which I will. But
we'll have to live stream that. We'll put it on YouTube.
Yeah, okay. And I love it. Like I use a lot of Aikido techniques, but I just bring it to a more realistic nature. When they attack each other, sometimes, they place their hand in your hand and it feeds into the vacuum, but very seldom does it work out like that where you're fed that hand for a pain compliance move. But it's mostly joint locks and stuff that is really good. I think you got to supplement Aikido training with some old style, hard.
Other training involved.
Yeah, I believe so.
What about something like Muay Thai? Do you think that is a more well-rounded martial art in the sense that you wouldn't need to supplement with anything else? Or does that even exist? You need to pull from a bunch of different ones?
I think it's an awesome. I did a little bit of training in Thailand until I broke my foot, but it depends on what you measure it by. If you're trained in Muay Thai, you can walk down to the south end of Eureka. If you're talking about if I put the best fighters on the best styles, I mean, I have awesome respect for those guys. They bang, but it's not what's the word? It's not a complicated style. It's not an intricate style. But it's definitely effective. If you train in Muay Thai, you're going to be able to take care of yourself. When I think about it, I think about how little energy it takes to get the job done rather than, I'm 69, I'm pushing 70, I'm not going to go in and
just start swinging from the hip.
Well, I can still, but I want to do less work. I want it to be easy. I want it to
be over quick.
I'm gonna make it quick, and I am gonna use your energy against you. It's not my station in life now to be, Mr. Warrior. That being said, I still can for some reason. I hit the bag harder than I almost ever did, because the intrinsic movement is there. My body has learned to relax and just utilize every pound per square inch measurement goes into the exact spot I directed in, and so I don't use as much energy.
And you said you learned to train with a samurai sword as well?
Yeah, uh, Iaido, and it's the art of the draw. Um, really, I didn't study that till I was already a black belt.
What made you want to train in that?
Um,
Just to kind of further your direction down this path?
well,
Because that seems like such a niche training, right? Because how often are you going to walk down the street with a samurai sword?
yeah, it's true. And a friend brought me. Basically, if I'm in LA, right, and there's a famous Shotokan instructor at Oshima. I did my best to get in with him and go, you know, train me. I got to spend some time. So there was this Iaido teacher that had a unbelievable reputation, and I said, I want to meet him, and got an introduction and started training with him. I was glad I didn't learn that or start that study till I was already kind of accomplished black belt. But weapons extend your technique, they extend your reach, and but it still comes from your body. And he was an awesome teacher, just really skilled.
How do you train for something like that? Does it have any live application where you're going against a real opponent with another sword?
Because you're using live blades, so no, you don't. You have two-person sets that you do that would scare you to death, especially if you did it with him. But kendo, which you're talking about hitting with the sticks or whatever with the headgear, but Iaido translates art of the draw. So quite often there are standing, but mostly you're on your knees with your feet crossed in the back. And it's very ritualistic martial arts. You bow to oh sensei, and then you put your sword on in a very ritualistic way, and then um, you sit there in seizan and meditation, and then you explode off your knee, drawing the sword out and making a cut at the same time. And then there'll be a series of movements, always ending with your opponent's death. So if you'll do a series of movements, come up with a block and very specific movements with the body just directing the sword, but they say the sword directs you. And usually you end up with, you cut the guy's head off. And so the last moment of that, you're looking down at the head laying on the ground, and then you come up and you do a motion with the sword that flicks the blood off. There is no blood, but you flick it off, and then here, and then you put the sword back in, you step back, and you're seated again. So it's very meditative and very threading the needle. But like my teacher would do a two-person set with you, and you go, and you can hear the blades in the air, whoosh, and he'd go, whoosh, and it would stop like an inch, because most often a katana, it's called, or people know it as a samurai sword. The end game is to get the last 3 inches of the blade through the skull on the top. So that's the bunkai. That's the application. So, but it's very specific how it moves. The blade has to come up and shoom, the way it builds up speed, so it has the right velocity to penetrate. Um, it's considered a very artsy martial art. But I learned a lot from it because it extended my awareness out here. When I put a sword in my hand, I went, "Whoa, this is powerful," you know. But I had a center of gravity, so now I knew I was going to extend this now, and I was eager to learn. So it was fun. And
Well, in artsy today, but back when people were fighting with swords, probably incredibly useful.
yeah, yeah. In fact, one of the things I do every once in a while with my martial arts students is I bring in pictures of my teacher, and I bring in picture of in a little biography or whatever, and I bring in a picture of his or her teacher, and then I bring in a picture of their teacher. So it's three teachers going back. Well, by the time I get to the third, they're practically in a samurai uniform. You know what I mean? It wasn't that long ago we were chopping people's heads off. We still are, unfortunately. And
Certain places.
Yeah, yeah. So we like to think, well, no, this is then. This is like I'm three guys away from him, and I'm teaching you. That's how close you are to that. So that's your approach. That's your bunkai. That's your application. You know, it's not always an application. Always. If you're anyplace else, you should do aerobics. Uh-huh.
Yeah, do some aerobics.
Yeah.
Go hit some weights. You'll be all right.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective when you start looking backwards in terms of lifespan. Because, I mean, the country we're in right now isn't that old when you
Yeah.
start going that way.
Hmm.
We're three people ago. And now here we are sitting talking in front of microphones.
Yeah. And it's scary that how quick we forget. Um, you know, I think people that a certain persuasion, and some young people, the civil rights movement, how ugly it was, and if you were there and you saw it, it would be hard for you not not to say, oh, that's not good. But people have already forgotten that, and it's kind of like the hate is starting to well up again for minorities, for immigrants, or whatever. And I say, no, you got to look back there, see what happened, see what people were doing. They were killing each other. It was an ugly time. Don't do that again. Who told you to do that again? It's a little scary for me.
Do you think about that a lot? The current political climate? Seems like
You,
that weighs on you.
it does, because I think, in a sense, history is repeating itself. And I mean, the first president I saw talk was Eisenhower. I was jumping under my desk for nuclear war drills in school. Um, I I did see the civil rights movement. I lived in Boston, which was a hotbed of violence and very hard place to desegregate. And saw the pain of that, saw the assassinations, the craziness that caused, and we sort of got politically correct for a while. It seemed like, okay, good, that's over. No, it's not. We're bringing that shit back, and it's gotten to be in vogue again. It's okay, and it's disguised in different terms today. But it's going on again, and that's disturbing for me.
Do you have mixed feelings about the direction in the sense that some things are definitely better, right? Overall, I think you could say that society is a more comfortable place for more
Yeah,
people. It's
yeah,
more
yeah,
accepting. But then you do have downsides, like the problems plaguing young men, like the direction of the country at large. Is that kind of like a mixed pill to swallow where
I think
you've
so.
been around and you've kind of seen some things?
Yeah, I think so. I think I mean, in a way, I'm like, I young people are great today. I think what I'm talking about, I don't think it's their fault, but I think, um, I have a lot of respect for them. There seems to be a work ethic. There seems to be a lot of good things. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag, and who knows? Who knows? I'm turning into one of those old guys that said, when I was a kid, it was like I had to chop wood before I went to school. We didn't have any psychological problems. Whatever. But yeah, it's just the returning of those things is most problematic to me. Um, Racism kind of building, rearing its ugly head. A lot of things were under the rocks, the crawly things, and then all of a sudden the rock was thrown open and people would be embarrassed to say what they believed 20 years ago, right? Because it was hip to be kind of cool. But now it's okay to go, well, then they're saying things that aren't so cool. And it's being allowed.
Do you think those uncool things are more apparent today than they were in the past, or it's just you're you're more aware of it?
Are they more apparent? No, I think they got better for a little while. For a blink, they got better after the Vietnam War and the hippie movement, the first hippie movement, and things seemed to get better for a while. It was community oriented stuff, and it seemed better, and then it slowly you know, turned around.
Just a gradual decline backwards.
You know, is it a decline backwards? Some people would say no. I think it is. I think we could run into some trouble. I think bad things could happen unless we change um, our approach and how we. I mean, the country is so divided right now, and I feel like I'm a member of a 50-50 club, and the other 50 club scares the shit out of me. But I'm only 50%, if that, you know. So there's a great divide right now, and that's pretty scary to me.
I wonder how real that divide actually is, because I've slipped into that mindset occasionally of, I'm definitely afraid of where we are as a country and the path that we are on, but I think that most people fall into that. I think most people realize political polarization is reaching a tipping point, but I
Mhm.
don't think most people would disagree if they got in a room together and talked about a difficult topic. I think most people would say, oh, yeah, we might have different opinions, we might have different views, but I don't hate you. You're still a person, you're my neighbor, I care for you.
Mhm.
But if you look online, that doesn't translate. And I think a lot of people are looking online and then thinking, well, shit, this country's going to burn.
I hope you're right. I really do. And you probably are right because that's where I'm looking online. My world is pretty small here, really, you know, so um, I hope we pull it together. I really do. Um, it's hard not to feel like the enemy's on the other side in a way, you know. I mean, so with the Second Amendment stuff is always a vague threat on the other side, which is like, what's up with that? You know, yeah, we got guns, yeah, so do we. You know what I mean? It's like that's always looming. There's this like this another level of like threat. In the old days, it was like the SLA. Remember them?
Mm-mm.
Symbionese Liberation Army, the Weathermen.
I have heard of the Weathermen.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% familiar with what they were about.
Well, they were radicals bombing labs that were doing testing for stupid stuff or whatever, and the SLA kidnapped Patty Hearst. And do you remember that?
A little before my time,
It
maybe.
was a little before your time, but it's from the Hearst. It was enormous, but the left was considered crazy and kind of violent in those days. They were out there, the Black Panthers. They were going like, "We're coming after you." Um, I think, and that wasn't good, but it kind of was effective in some ways. But it's kind of the other way around. I think the left side is kind of scared of the right, almost physically now, because there's always these threats
I'm scared of both extremes. I think
and
both extremes, I've seen so many videos of, you want to talk about left wing people just beating the shit out of random people just walking down the street at some of those protests. And I'm sure it happens on the right too. When you get to the extreme of the political aisle, people just go crazy.
I say that pen.
Oh, yeah. Do you want a piece of paper too? You can say, are you trying to tell me something? Oh, yeah. We could wrap it if you like. We've done an hour and a half.
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun,
Well,
wasn't it?
It was a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on and talking
I
with me.
enjoyed it. We got on a lot of subjects.
Yeah, we bounced around a little
Did
bit.
we talk about boxing at all?
Well, we could throw that in right now. We talked about a little bit
Uh-huh.
about boxing, but that's how I found you was the lab.
Uh-huh.
Which how long had that started? Did you
Oh.
just recently start doing that?
It's been a couple of years, but I started off slow.
Just building it up.
Yeah, it's a small gym. Like I say, the women have come out like crazy. I'm teaching a bunch of privates, but it's been a lot of fun, and I love teaching people. I don't have 10 years to turn you into a black belt, but I can teach you a lot of the principles with boxing and stretch your limits a little bit.
Get you started on the right track.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Gary, this was a lot of fun, man. I
Yeah,
really
me
appreciate
too.
you coming
Thanks,
on.
Nick.
We'll have
Thanks
to do
for
this
having
again.
me.
Do you want to plug where people can find you, where they can find the lab if they want to join up?
Can you just put a link?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay.
I'll
Do you want
link-
to say, do you have a website? I know you have a
I
Facebook
don't. I just
page.
use my Facebook page.
Facebook page
Yeah.
is just the lab,
The lab.
Eureka,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Gary, really, this was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
I had fun. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yep.